I am chaos upon the verse. Interplanetary energies, been a cosmic refugee to get deep. Metamorphosize and funk. Cause my level of my bass and my treble is strictly tied in. Pure chaos. Adding to the jam, not the jiff. So come along, library, spit it on thick.
I mean, once again, the information is there. It's right at your fingertips if you only know how to get it. And hopefully through these shows, we will help you find how to get these information, little easy things. It says the credibility of a source is a factor that political propagandists and television advertisers are especially concerned with. This is in a psychology book. It says, that is why aspirin commercials are often delivered by a sincere, dignified man in a white doctor's coat. White doctor's coat, because that's a part of the imagery. And even orange juice commercials feature biology teachers and nutritionists. Ain't that something?
It sure is.
And for black people, according to this book, we are more likely to believe it coming from a white man than we are believing it coming from our own
That's the monopoly of self-hate right there.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely. And a report was done, I can't find I could probably flip through and find the page real quick, that in 1957, I believe, a report was done using a little girl and a doll. And the little girl chose the white doll over the black doll.
Right.
And oh, here it goes. It says, the black self-concept. Minority groups are not immune to the attitudes and norms of the majority. Once again, because this is part of conditioning and so-called brainwashing or propagandists. It says, when the norms of American society state or imply that blacks are inferior to whites, and when as a result blacks are treated as inferior, it is hard for many blacks themselves to avoid getting the message and believing it. I don't care if you're a part of the Christian faith or even the Muslim faith. Many times when these religious organizations come, we come right into it and we're still at the bottom. That's why when we come into Islam, we want to be Arabs. And when we come into Christianity, we want to be white. And the color of Jesus don't matter.
Right.
We'll get to that in a few.
Yeah, hold that.
And the color of Jesus, don't matter. And basically, in effect, what we're saying is the truth don't matter.
Right.
But it says many. And, you know, also in religion, there's the old curse of Ham and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that later, though. It says many more recent studies have confirmed that Clark, who did this report, Mimi Clark, did this report in 1947. Clark's conclusion that black American children have often come away from the experience of discrimination with a sense of worthlessness and self-hate. Now, I mean, we should be very concerned because I love children, and not in any perverted way, but the children are the future.
But when you think about that, since I was 1950s, what you're saying right there is establishing this goes on between generations.
Right.
It takes that one stronghold to say, look, let's break this down. Let's do some investigation of this.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things a lot of people don't understand, they don't understand the power or how the mind works. And you know, hopefully we can get some...
Mind is the greatest, mind is the greatest instrument ever created.
Right. In the future, we can get some psychologists on here to explain on just how the mind works, because obviously the media outlets and psychologists has figured this out. You know, like you were talking about the images during a football game and this kind of thing. One of the things that the way the government uses their imageries is what they'll do is they'll take a sporting event or they'll take a movie that they know that a lot of people are watching. Now, last week I was watching, I flipped through the station, I hit this race car, and NASCAR, that's a popular sport. A lot of people watch the NASCAR. What happened was, right in the middle of the NASCAR race, President Clinton comes on. Boom, he comes on, interrupting the race. What he said in 30 seconds didn't amount to anything. The only thing he said was, well, I'm going to somewhere, and we're going to discuss more of the problems that's happened over Yugoslavia. That's it. And Milosevic is still the problem. He always bring up somebody who's the problem. He's still the problem. Now, so a lot of people, and then they'll cut back to the race. Well, at the time they cut in, the lead was about to change. The lead changed in the race. People wanted to see the lead change. They cut away and they go to President Clinton, and people say, golly, man, why they got to cut away? The race was happening then, you know? Now, when they hear Milosevic's name, they get all bent out of shape. That guy, man, won't you just go over and just kill that guy? Go over and kill up everybody over there. I'm tired of this stuff,
It's like what Goebbels did in World War II with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Propaganda and agitation. They give out the propaganda and it agitates you.
It's so
And
simple. I'm done. Go ahead. I just want to bring that up.
I want to also say that's very interesting because Pavlov experiment. It's called association. So anything that is a painful experience, if you connect a word right then and there at the same time,
negative and positive reinforcement.
Right.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes,
Then I'll give you a good for instance. What's up, my black brother? Don't call me black. I'm not black.
Oh boy.
I'm an African American. I'm a colored or Negro.
Or better yet, don't call me African at all. Call me an American.
Call me an American. I'm not African. Why? Because the pain of being black in America, the pain of knowing what took place in Africa, of being ripped.
Look in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, Kwesi Nkrumah and other civil rights organizations would, for some strange reason, took a long time, but Webster finally took out the word nigger.
Right.
Finally took out the word. Every ethnic group around the world do not have a stereotype in a basic dictionary. That should be put in a colloquial slang dictionary. But for black people, the word nigger stayed for over several centuries, and not too long ago, the word is not taken out. Of course, who's going to go buy a new dictionary since you're not in school?
And that word, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you know, our people has been brainwashed for so long that now we even dance and pop our fingers and even repeat some of the rap lyrics that has derogatory terms in it, such as the one you just mentioned, even if they relate to our women in the form of bitches, hoes, and you know what else. Even the women would dance to this, so you can see.
Or even the women perform that.
Oh, absolutely.
And that goes into showing you the power of the media. One thing that Amos Wilson said is
great intellectual.
The late Amos Wilson, who for me, just like many others, Kwame Ture, Amos Wilson,
Dr. John Henry Clark.
Dr. John. Well, Dr. John Henry Clark was more of an age thing, but I'm talking more of a suspicious death here. Wali Muhammad, of the editor of the late editor of the Final Call newspaper. Harold Washington, those who passed away recently, Ron Brown, who they've never shown the wreckage of the plane, which they usually always do.
Mickey Leland.
Mickey Leland. All of these men, black men, dying under mysterious circumstances.
Oh, you're a kook.
Once again, a kook theorist. But what was my point? I forgot. But anyway, all of these dying under mysterious circumstances, and then when you go and you look, it seems as though they were on the verge, you know what I'm saying, of becoming into power. Ron Brown. Amos Wilson was just getting to be known. But not to get off my point. But they're coming into power.
No, it relates. It relates. Yes, it relates.
Harold Washington. All of them coming into power, but gone. Now, one thing that Amos Wilson said is that the music, the beat, that old African beat, you know what I'm saying? And what you have is, that's a part of our very nature, that rhythm.
It's part of that melanin.
And so, and many of the times, I know for rap music, I love to hear the beat. I don't even listen to the words. But see, the subconscious picks up everything. And the subconscious is a fertile ground. It's like a seed being dropped. And so what the enemy does, and I say the enemy because there's positive rap that was in the origins of rap. Public Enemy, KRS-One, Poor Righteous Teacher, Tribe Called Quest, Eric B. and Rakim. Those were shoved to the back burners, and you have NWA. Not that these, understand, I even love those groups.
Because they have talent,
Let me say this, though. What the enemy did, like he does with black movies, he'll show the color purple, but he won't put on a Marcus Garvey. What he did, or a Sankofa, what he did was he rode the idea, his idea, in on the music, on the rhythm. And so you have the bees and the hoes, where bees with attitudes, and I forget these groups, the name of the groups, where you used to have the Supremes, now you have bees with attitudes and things like that. So what he did was, in the 60s, this is a good point of how powerful the media is. The 60s, we were fighting for liberation. We were fighting for something of our own. Then they killed off the black leaders. Martin Luther King.
If they didn't kill them off
Malcolm
physically,
X,
they killed them off in the paper.
Medgar Evers, and the
assassination.
propaganda. They deported Marcus Garvey. They exiled W.E.B. Du Bois. Many of them, their passports being taken. Black leaders.
Right.
We should
Right.
research and look into the horrible history of the government and its a relationship with black leadership. But anyway, what they did is after they killed them off, there was that void, that vacuum. What was the message that was being fed to the community? No, here comes good old Hollywood, good old Tinseltown, which Marlon Brando said was controlled by a very small Jewish community. And what they presented in the vacuum was Shaft, Superfly. Most of these were glorified.
Black Caesar.
Most of these were glorified drug dealers who pimped women. And then that was in the 70s. So then what that seed went into the mind of our pregnant black women. And then what happened is because that move to gain a power of our own and to build an economic base of our own was destroyed because those black leaders who advocated that were destroyed. What they then did was they sold our black elders, in essence, sold out for the Cadillac, the nice home, gave up the struggle, but that seed of being a pimp and a hustler was still planted. So now you have a generation born still wanting power, still fighting, but now they because that seed was planted, now they're fighting each other, and they don't even know why. They're fighting over territory that's not theirs. They're fighting over drugs that they didn't put in the community, and they're killing each other with weapons that
they don't even make.
The factories to make the weapons aren't even in the community. You being gangster, you being pimped, you being hustled, and you call yourself that, brothers and sisters. But man, let's wake up, because you are the most, Minister Farrakhan said that you are the most powerful, and I believe it. That's why I love all the brothers and sisters. You are the most powerful generation that there is, because you're not standing for the okie doke. You don't like the preachers because you feel that they're pimping your grandparents.
Like your boy Lions.
I mean, and this is just the facts. I'm just bringing out the truth of how the youth feel.
I do make mockery.
And they're a very powerful generation, and that's why there's a plan to really destroy them.
Let me interject one thing. Every Sunday, they got a bunch of supposedly shows that deal with the political arena.
Oh boy.
And of these shows, they got like This Week, and it used to be This Week with David Brinkley.
Oh, last week we told a lie. Well, this week we'll tell another lie.
They got the Meet the Press, and then I'll Face the Nation.
On
and
television, because they're going to tell their own vision.
Oh, yeah, the News Hour, So I got to thinking, that's like, who sponsors all this stuff? And just why most of them saying the same thing, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I got to look, and there's a company called Arthur Daniel Midland, who is probably...
Oh, boy.
This company is a corporate welfare recipient that gets lots of taxpayers' money to further their cause, and that is to further the pockets of the people who own this thing. But they sponsor all these shows, and the reason they sponsor these shows is because they want their agenda, which means they want to keep you dummied down, and keep you off the focus of the main issues. So they pay big money to get those puppets up there, to come on those shows and spit out that propaganda that they spit out every Sunday.
It's like a dog and pony show.
If you watch one show, you can just about predict what they're going to be talking about on the next show, and you can predict what they're going to talk about on the next show, and all this kind of nonsense. But, one of the things is this, when you talk about how the media portrays stories, is you look, I guess one of the second hottest things going is they're dropping the welfare rolls. One of the welfare rolls are dropping. They're dropping. Well, if the welfare rolls are dropping, tell me where all these people are going, and tell me where all these people are getting the jobs at. Because I just seen in the paper where another company is cutting 200 and something jobs. You know what I mean? Companies out there at these Air Force bases are cutting jobs. People losing their jobs. I was talking to a lady the other day at work. She works out there at the Air Force base. Her outfit where she works at, they're moving out of state. You know what I mean? She's either left holding the bag or pack up the family and the kids and run out of state with them. And I don't think that's likely. So if the welfare rolls are dropping, all you people who work in that welfare departments and whatever, tell me where these people are and where all the jobs they're getting, I might want to go get one. Go ahead, bro.
Let me say this real quick, that I made the comment about the Jews. And before I'm attacked by any type of anti-Semitism remarks, like you say, some of those out there are anti-Kemet.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning black. Marlon Brando said on Larry King, he said, Hollywood is run by Jews. Mr. Brando said on the talk show, it is owned by Jews, and they should have a greater sensitivity about the issue of people who are suffering. Now, this is not to say all Jews, just like you can't say all Baptists, you can't say all Muslims, even though the media, the Western media would like to, they do that. But I'm not saying that, but they do that. Now, Marlon Brando's comments, however, were similar to statements made in a 1997 Playboy interview that said, I was mad at the Jews in the business because they largely funded the industry. This was said by the actor Lawrence Goebel, who is Jewish. Now, Irvin Rubin, president of the militant Los Angeles-based Jewish Defense League, vowed to make Brando's life, Mr. Brando's life a living hell. Now, who could do that but Satan himself, make somebody's life a hell?
So you mean...
If you get a book called An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood, by Neil Gaber, chronicles the founding and subsequent dominance of the American film industry and major studios by Eastern European Jews and immigrants. And I saw on Channel 16 not too long ago where it was the show on Hollywood that they stated the same thing. And about, as far as the sensitivity, I just want to point this out, then you go ahead. It says, some of the better known examples of this are Norman Lear, a Jew, who brought about Good Times in the Jeffersons. Of course, nothing is good about being in the ghetto. And Sanford and Son, a junk dealer, who's disrespected by his own son. Ed Weinberg, Amen, Golan and Gobus, King Solomon's Mine, Amy Bernstein, and Tom Rosenberg, and Mark Abraham, Sugar Hill, Steven Seagal, Mark for Death, and we cannot forget Steven Spielberg bringing out the sister who actually wrote the book, I forget the sister's name, The Color Purple, which showed a black man and his abuse of a black woman. Never showed a slave master, though, even though it's in the time of slavery. Never showed the slave master. That's that whole mind trick. And then they never heightened at the end that he paid for the trip for her sister to come to try to redeem himself. They never emphasized that.
Yeah, because what you see in the book is completely indifferent was portrayed in the movie. And sometimes it's good watching the movie, but if there's a book or some kind of transfer to go along with it, I think it's better to get the book itself, because the movie is not the greatest implementation of how you have a particular thought or a learning lesson.
Especially if it's in the hands of someone who wants to use that movie for their own agenda.
I know that's right.
And also, not to hog it all up, but you know, there was New Jack City, there was Boys in the Hood, there was Colors. All these movies came about at the time when the Honorable Louis Farrakhan believes, and I believe, that the American government was going to move on the black youth. And therefore, Minister Farrakhan, seeing this, called for the Million Man March, and I believe held back those forces for a little while, but not for long.
You know, and it's interesting that, you know, you bring that point up about how certain Jewish folks are running Hollywood and creating these negative images of Africans, creating negative images of Mexicans, Hispanics, and, you know, people with non-European descent. They always have negative images on them. And if you ever noticed, even some of your more popular movies, like the one you just mentioned, The Color Purple, and and the other one about the 3 women who's looking for men. One, there's always the black men are played, or the African men are played.
Yeah,
in
there's
negative.
definitely black men bashing at some of these programs.
Yeah, but they seem to be the more popular shows. And when you mention Israel, you can't, and as far as I'm concerned, you can't mention Israel without saying the ADL or the B'nai B'rith. And a lot of people are familiar with the ADL, Anti-Defamation League. What they'll do is the ADL, they'll come out and they'll support some of these supposedly civil rights organizations like the NAACP and all these kind of places. They'll fund those people money because they dictate to those people what to do and how to say it. You know what I mean? Those people, they're not that effective. I mean, they're just there, to be honest about it.
Right.
What I want people to understand is the ADL is part of the B'nai B'rith, and what B'nai B'rith, the base of B'nai B'rith is right inside the United Nations Plaza in New York. Now, United Nations Plaza is the same place where the United Nations' headquarters is, which is the same monies and the same land that I think was Rockefeller, who once donated that land to create the United Nations. Now, the thing I bring this up is because B'nai B'rith means Sons of the Allowance. And it was created in 1843, and I want people to understand that many of the people that was in this B'nai B'rith organization supported the American Civil War and also supported the Ku Klux Klan. And the B'nai B'rith and the ADL are the same individuals who also come out and label blacks as anti-Semitic and racist. And yet, when you did and when you just spoke about the portrayal of Hollywood and the images, what the heck are they doing?
Yeah.
They're anti-black.
And there's no black leader that I know of today that is outspoken on behalf of black or the poor or the oppressed that is not labeled anti-Semitic. Jesse, of course, Minister Farrakhan, without a doubt. Any grassroots leadership is anti-Semitic. And I mean, there's none. And by, once again, this is a media ploy. And once they put this label attached to you, you're a pariah. And what they try to do by attaching this label to you is to discredit then anything that you may have to say in opposition to the inordinate control of certain entities. But one of the things that, and this is getting back, I guess, to the media and off that subject a little bit.
That definitely relates
Oh, yeah. You got to put that out.
In an article entitled Decline of the Fourth Estate, first written in 1951 and republished 10 years later, Trollhan said, in Washington, where 1,000 newspaper men apply their trade, there is a mounting suspicion that members of the press have begun to grow wary of the exacting watchdog role and have been attaching themselves to the first estate, the ruling class. Now listen to this very carefully, that there's a suspicion, and this is in 1951, the book was written, so the suspicion was going on before that. They're saying, in essence, that within the news media, many newsmen are suspicious of others, that they have attached themselves to the ruling powers, and therefore their reporting of certain events has been tainted by the ruling class. It says, the simple truth is that the press has given up the fact hunting for the less arduous and frequently more profitable role of interpreting what has gone before and predicting what is to come. In conformity, there's that word, with the administration's pattern. Now, a good example of that today is Connie Chung. Connie Chung said that Newt Gingrich's mother said that the First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, was a bitch.
That's on record, too.
And Connie Chung, who was eye to eye, and they began to see Connie Chung's eyes, and they weren't like theirs, and they cut Connie Chung.
They certainly did.
Knowing that if Barbara Walters had reported it, she would still be on television today. Another example, Donahue had the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on his show, not once, but twice. Arsenio Hall has Honorable Louis Farrakhan on his show, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Jewish control, moved Arsenio's show so far back that you may have even missed it by falling asleep. They wanted to cut the show, and eventually they took Arsenio's show off the air under certain what they call ratings, poor ratings, which Arsenio's show was one of the widely watched in the black community. So where's this rating system coming from? Of course, you can't rate black shows like you do white shows. If the black community and Hispanic community is 13 and 20% of the population, of course they're going to have low ratings. So they moved that show out, and then Arsenio tried to come in with another show with Fox. What's her name? I forget the sister's name who was in the movie Set It Off. But you know that she would attract a large audience, and Arsenio would. That show wasn't on but a week. And they said that Arsenio had a run-in with one of the Jewish writers of the show, and that show was cut.
So what you see is a sense of word association and word associations. It starts with the euphemisms, then it starts with the glittering generalities, and it starts with the name calling. And you know, one of the funny things when you look into this, what is called propaganda or agitation, it's kind of funny you talk about Newt Gingrich. Because back in the time of like 1990, when I guess like 4 years, or actually, about 4 years before the Republican got the House and Senate back, there was a pamphlet which he gave off to all his Republican boys, the good old party. He gave a book called Language, A Key of Mechanism and Control. And it lists two different premises, two lists of words. One is a positive word, which is a governing word, which glitters the generalities or when speaking about themselves. But the other part are negative words, which are name-calling words, which were to be used against your opponent, whether they were Democrat or against your particular issue. Now, some of the positive words which they use is like, whenever they talk about themselves or their party, is like actively or building or caring or challenge or change or common sense, dream, duty, and power, freedom. But whenever they use these negative words, it's called, towards their opponents, betray, corruption, crisis, decay, destruction, failure, greed, incompetent. And so when you look at these word associations, and there's a book, I'm glad you mentioned about that one, but there's a book by Alfred McLean Lee and Elizabeth Bryant Lee, husband and wife team. They wrote a book called The Fine Art of Propaganda, and it was written in 1939. And when you look at, as of course around that time, when you look at this propaganda, it can be blatant as a swastika or subtle as a joke. Its persuasive techniques are regularly applied by politicians, advertisers, journalists, radio personalities, and others who are interested in influencing human behavior. These messages can be used to accomplish positive social ends, as in campaigns to reduce drunk driving, but they are also used to win elections or to sell malt liquor. Now, there's these individuals named Anthony Pratkanis and Elliot Aronson, who points out in their propaganda analyst website, it talks about every day we are bombarded with one persuasive communication after another. These appeals persuade not through the give and take of argument and debate, but through the manipulation of symbols and of our most basic human emotions. For better or worse, ours is an age of propaganda. With the growth of communication tools like the internet, the flow of persuasive messages can have a dramatic acceleration. For the first time ever, citizens around the world are participating in uncensored conversations about their collective future. This is a wonderful development, but there is a cost. The information revolution has led to information overload, and people are confronted with 100 of messages each day. Although few studies have looked at this topic, it seems fair to suggest that many people respond to this pressure by processing messages more quickly and, when possible, by taking mental shortcuts, which means you're not thinking no more. You're just giving, when you're giving off for something that maybe you can identify, even if it's true or not, you can assimilate yourself with this information. And this is what's going on. The advent of word association and word disassociation. Let me use a positive word to talk about myself,
Right,
but use a
right.
negative word to talk about Farrakhan and talk about Jesse
Wow,
Jackson,
man.
or talk about any other person who wants to go against the so-called standard norm of what you call as conformity. I mean, it's incredible when it goes into that.
One of the things, we were talking about words.
Yes, sir.
Word association. One of the words that they use against the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to come to my beloved leader's defense is the word hate.
Yes.
Now, this word in itself, see, sometimes they use words that are neutral. They're not positive, nor are they negative.
Yes.
Hate is one of those words. Hate is, if you look at the what hate is, well, let's look at
Colloquially,
the Bible.
it means something that's negative in our social.
Right. The Bible
but it has a different meaning.
The Bible says you can't serve two masters. You have to love one,
That's right.
and you have to hate the other one.
There you go.
Anything that one hates, one seeks to destroy. Now, if you hate, there are certain things in society, is what I'm saying, is that you should hate. You should hate to see child abuse. You should hate to see racism. You see, but then if one speaks out against the child abuser, or if one speaks out against racism, which is what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan does, then, of course, we don't have the resources or the media control, then let's label him a hater for speaking out against us who hate.
Right. Right.
And then the preachers who are yellowback, bootlicking, butt-dancing preachers who have no backbone and who don't come to defense of one black man, they then will open their mouth when they've never opened their mouth against the injustice that is blatant in the community. Then they'll open their mouth against the Honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
What a bunch of cowards in the name of Jesus. You know, I tell you. And this says, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan says that if you think that you are a free thinker, you are absolutely foolish. Today, the government of the United States is spending millions of dollars to perfect the art of mind control. Just that little bit alone. And then in the article, most of which I've been coming out of the Final Call newspaper, called The War Propaganda, the Control of Popular Opinion and the Undermining of the of American Democracy, it reads, the conscious and intellect manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. That's very true. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is by Edward Barnay's Propaganda, 1928. Now, what Edward Barnay says, he says right here, we are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. Now, where does that should strike the mind right there. Now, when we look in the Bible, if I can find it, I'll just have to quote it. The Bible says that, here we go, I would have quoted it, but it says here, it says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts and wickedness in the heavenly places. Now, heavenly places, meaning that don't get spooked out. Don't go out there with Captain Kirk in a place where no man has gone before. Let's come right down here to earth. Heavenly places, meaning airwaves, the control of the media. You know, one of the things when they attacked Saddam Hussein and they attacked Kosovo or whatever that's called, one of the main powers that makes America more powerful than other countries is America's control of the air through military might, their airplanes. But also what makes America so powerful is their ability to manipulate other societies with their culture. which is called soft
There you go.
war. There's
Yes,
hard
sir.
war,
Right.
which means guns.
Right.
Then there's soft war, which means culture. And the American culture, McDonald's, Wendy's, Disneyland, is all over the earth. Wherever you go, you'll see it. But another version, in the Amplified version, says this: "For we war not with flesh and blood, contending only with the physical opponents, the guns, the knives, but against the despotism," which means a tyrant rules. This is what the Amplified version says: "against the powers, against the masters of spirits who are the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spirit forces of wickedness in the heavenly sphere." In the King James, but to go on and go on, the Muslims, we're told by Honorable Louis Farrakhan, don't get just the King James, get as many different versions as you can.
It's 22 of them.
And also, if
Take your pick.
those of you who don't have the Holy Quran, get the Quran. But if you want to go ahead, and then, you know, the Bible is right on it with that.
You know, since you're talking about propaganda, you know, one of the biggest things that people don't understand is that, you know, how quickly, you know, we forget. One of the things is this: we had presidents just go through the this whole big ordeal about lying under oath and lying about his sexual escapades and this kind of thing. And when it was all said and done, of course, what the man do, you know, with his own affairs, that's his business. But, you know, when they said, you know, that he was lying, and of course he did lie when he said he didn't do it, and he had done it. Well, the thing of this is now we come back and we have supposedly be at war with Yugoslavia. Now, how am I to believe a president who lied about his sexual affairs? How am I supposed to believe him now when he's talking about things on an international basis?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And not only him doing the lying, but there was also, as one magazine publisher was going to put out, some more senators who also was caught into some embarrassing positions. Now, those people were also lying and trying to hide the truth. So why should the American people believe these same individuals when they stand up there and they say what a president is doing against some people in his own country, meaning Milosevic? Why should I believe him now?
I think that's called positive reinforcement. They'll use certain name-calling words in order to associate, even when he did something bad. They'll use certain euphemisms in order to change his particular perception or generalization into something which they can identify. And when you look at this, like I was talking about the word association and word disassociation of positive and negative words, people should look at their news media or look at their nightly TV show or news magazine or even your own magazine and look at it in a good focus point. Because, for instance, look at your local TV news. Of course, being here in the Miami Valley area, you realize that the news that this area gets off, also the newspaper, is given off with some kind of poll with some pencil pusher in Washington or New York by the computer is establishing what should be the main thing. So when you look at television or the television news, how is it deteriorating in some of these localities across the country? A trend that was making a mockery of claims that commercial TV stations kept the public informed about current events. A new study by this one monitoring group out of Colorado, they analyzed tapes of local evening news programs that aired the same day that fall over 100 television stations in 35 states. Stations use sensationalism and tabloid journalism to manipulate conditioning viewers. This is what was concluded by this. Crime stories, mainly murder, dominate half of the newscast. On local news programs around the nation, fully 30% of the news was devoted towards crime. Coverage of government came in a distant second at 11%. In the mayhem index of local newscasts, stories about crime, disaster, and war average about 42% of the news and about 100 stations. The environmental stories accounted for 2% of the local TV time. Poverty received about 1.8% of airtime. Unions and labor overall got 1.6%. And of course, civil rights, which is quite important, only got 0.9%, not 1%, 0.9%.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, there was no lack of fluff. Monitorings found extensive coverage of such news item as a Miss Bald Eagle, USA, a beauty contest for cows, a bourbon tasting contest in Texas, a kangaroo who fell into a swimming pool in Australia, and in California about them ugly frogs. Quality TV news reporting still exists, but of course, we know it's quite rare.
Oh, yeah.
The excesses of the local TV news industry are now chronic and habitual, institutionalized. So in many local TV newsrooms, the main rule is, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, yeah.
Often the more the lurid the story, the better its chances of topping the broadcast. The results of a closer shows like America's Most Wanted or Current Affair than anything might have journalists feel proud. Violent calamities, breathlessly narrated with arresting footage of police tape, body bags, and the like, which fascinate TV news programmers. But context is usually absent. Attention is lavished on tragic events, but not on what caused or prevented those particular events. That is quite interesting.
Most definitely.
One of the things that you were saying, Brother Keith, I think you were talking about Dusseldorf's rules for revolution.
Yes.
I want to say a little bit more about that, too. One of the things is that what is the purpose of the media? The purpose of the media, of course, is to inform us into such a way that we are able to intelligently make the correct decisions, but not according to today. In a book by Khalid al-Mansour, he wrote, I believe this is, Khalid al-Mansour, called Will the West Rule Forever? He wrote, the media in America is well coordinated and structured money-making machine. Money-making machine.
Big time money.
It says, pure and simply, they are in the business of selling images, shaping thinking, and control, not news or entertainment. He says not news or entertainment, so it's not even supposed to be entertaining,
right?
Because even in the entertainment, they're trying to shape your view, your attitude, your thinking. Therefore, if like Clinton, not Bill Clinton, but George Clinton, said, you know, where your butt will, something about where your mind goes, your butt will follow. He didn't say butt. And Minister Farrakhan says those who control the diameter of your thinking, which means the center point to the outer point, control the circumference of your activity. Therefore, if one wants to escape the circumference of what the media is telling you, then this is what happens. This is why the prophets were rejected, because they come outside of that sphere of knowledge that society has, introducing something that's new, that will liberate the mind and will free the mind. And this is why they were so much ridiculed, and the Quran is a perfect book that details the ridicule. They called them imbeciles. They called their minds wandering. They said that they were trying to overcome or corrupt the government when the government was already corrupted. But that's why one has to come outside. And this might seem outside of what the mainstream media is telling you. It's absolutely outside of what the mainstream media is saying. But we wanted to now go into another area, the perceptions of democracy. Okay, it says here, have you ever wondered how the average American citizen tolerates public policy war on poor women and children, a prison industry with over 50% blacks and Hispanics males, a government-sponsored drug culture, a sex education classes where 14-year-old high school students are taught how to properly apply condoms to this little wooden phallus called Woody.
No pun intended.
That's what it's called. In every one of these instances, tolerance and support by the public is maintained largely by preconditioning. Conditioning. Once again, this word conditioning. Study that word. Look that word up in your dictionary. Look it up in a psychology book. Because once you're conditioned, that's it. But there's a process of conditioning that happens before that. For instance, if I want to get you to be numb to the sight of death, then what I will do is I will create movies that show war, and the more realistic it is, the more the mind starts to block it and to shut it out. So therefore, your mind is then therefore conditioned into such a way as for black brothers to go up and just pop another brother and see that bullet go into his body, and to see his body shake and convulse under the heat of that bullet, and to laugh. You know what I'm saying? To see his own brother's blood, his life just spill out on the ground. That is a form of being, or that is being conditioned.
Right. You be sensitive.
Because no brother is in truth born from the womb of his own black mother to shoot his own brother. Right. But he's been conditioned by good old American media.
When you think right is right, when you think wrong is right.
Wrong is right and right is wrong. And the words that are used today is I'm wicked. I'm bad. Everything that's bad is good, and everything that's good is bad.
That's right.
Straight oxymoron.
Though more cynical, observers prefer to use the term propaganda or the more politically correct public relations. And if you notice, a lot of leaders have public relations firms. It says the engineering of public thought has been a running theme throughout the American democratic experience. The control of, and just goes on and just saying that there's no such thing as democracy.
That's a strong content right there.
As Malcolm said, it's only disguised hypocrisy.
So when you look at it, that's mostly perception that we rely on.
Right.
That's the only thing that's really keeping the fabric of this society going in complete chaos. That's the main thing, is to appease people in a particular way where they'll feel, oh, everything's all right, the media is all right. The economy is doing good.
Right.
Wall Street went over 10,000 points.
Yeah.
My 401k might still be there. We got no Social Security, of course. But everything's just right. And of course, something's not right.
Everything is terribly wrong.
Could that also be, when you talk about imageries, the religious imageries we see, with some religious figures, such as I seen a billboard that they giving away a Jesus tape, and I've seen bits and pieces of it. I'm not sure. I think, Steve, you got a copy.
Yeah,
of
I
that
got
tape,
the copy. I haven't opened it up yet, but I did see.
Mine's in the garbage bin.
I did see some of the video, I think, on TBN. I did see some of it, and I wouldn't just totally throw it away. I wouldn't just totally throw it away, because in every lie there's a degree of truth, or the lie wouldn't be able to exist. That's the one thing about a lie, is that it can't exist on its own. If I told you that I was actually from Mars and that my skin is actually purple, that's a lie. You wouldn't believe it. I mean,
hey, if you associate it right.
If I mixed it,
some fools fell for that. They drink that Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that's true. They also tried to chase a comet. But anyway, let's go over this. I mean, because it's spread throughout the community, and we just want to clear some things up, because this is another form of media. One of the things about Christian history is and I hate to say it to some of the brothers and sisters, but you have to look it up for yourself. You can take it or let it alone. But the Christianity that Jesus espoused is not what we got today. Because one of the things is, if you look up the Council of Nicaea in 325, many decisions were made by pagans that introduced paganistic concepts to Jesus. One of them coming up, I hate to say it, is Easter. One of the things you have to ask yourself, it probably will pass because of the airing of this show, but one of the things, brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters, is ask yourself, one thing, why is it a movable holiday? I mean, it ranges from almost a month in difference. It can jump. Another thing you have to ask yourself is, where does this bunny rabbit that lays eggs come from? A bunny, for one, is a mammal that does not lay eggs. What's really crazy is this miraculous supernatural bunny lays colored eggs. Why do you have to go find the eggs? These are the questions you should ask. Now, one of the things is that, ask him.
Ask the Reverend.
You gotta have faith.
In most pagan rituals, sex is always involved. The sun is always involved. So now, you have the movable holiday following the vernal equinox. Now, the pagans would color their women up nude, and the women would go and hide.
Blue was a favorite color among the Europeans.
Blue was a favorite color, and then blue is also a color of deceit.
Yeah.
Now, then the pagans would go, pagan men would go, and they would look for the women. And once they find them, they would, for lack of a better word, they would copulate with these women. And the bunny is a symbol of fertility. As a matter of fact, what you celebrate as Easter is really the celebration of Astarte.
Or Estar.
Estar.
E-O-S-T-R-E.
Exactly. Look it up on your internet or go down to the library and look it up for yourself. Now, this pagan god of fertility is symbolized by a bunny. Now, do you ever wonder why around the Easter time, why are the bunnies made of chocolate? Isn't chocolate an aphrodisiac?
So it has that plenty ethylene in it.
Ethylene?
Plenty ethylene.
Now, the bunny is also a symbol of Playboy, isn't it? Ain't that something? Now, what's the egg symbol of? It's symbol of course, birth or rebirth.
Right, rebirth.
As the winter or death is being overcome by the spring or the summer or the springing forth of what? Life.
Right.
So whereas a tree appeared to be dead, now it is coming back to life. So in it is truth in most pagans.
Yeah, because everything grows in the springtime. Your erection, I mean, your leaves, your trees, and everything grows.
Exactly,
and that's why that Estor festival came across. Of course, how it got articulated 2 or 3 centuries after Yeshua or Isus Christos, Isu. It's Yeshua ben Pandero, also your boy Jerusalem Snare Jesus.
And there, let me say this, though, before we get off. There's truth in the celebration. Now, I'm not going to say of Easter because Easter, there's no word in the Bible of Easter except for what they have put in there. They have taken out the King James, in the King James Version, the word Passover and put Easter in, and that is the only reason that you will be able to find the word Easter in the Bible today, which we are going to go into right now. Just going on to the cover of this. This says meticulous attention to authenticity. Now this is
another
by Time
media
magazine
consortium group, which is promulgating a propaganda and is agitating to me how incorrect they can be.
Now, I know Brother Mill show, Just Lose Your Injury, and also Big Mike show, they delve into the religious realm of things. I think y'all ought to check both of those shows out. Y'all can be enlightened and educated. But in this here, you talk about the authenticity. I know a Mill can tell me, and probably you can too, Brother Steve. They got a picture of a European Jesus on there, and I don't think that's the same.
Let me get into these words real quick. And then I know Brother Mill, who is like really a scientist on this. Let's look at these words, and then you tell me if this is meticulous attention to authenticity. Okay, meticulous means this, out of the dictionary. Not my dictionary, I didn't write it. Webster, good old Webster. He wrote, unduly or excessively careful of small details. Small details. Now, so this is very careful of small details, attention to authenticity. Let's look up that word authenticity, because they like to use them big words sometimes, but we are not that dumb today.
Oh, no.
And we're going to educate all of those who may not be as well educated, because it's going to be easy for you to get educated once you see how easy it is. Authoritative, having a genuine origin or authority, genuine, real. As an authentic paper, trustworthy, credible, true, and an authentic report.
You said.
Oh man, come on, let's get on into
trustworthy,
this now.
credible, and true.
Yeah.
And meticulous was paying close attention to small details.
That sounds like word association to me.
Well,
oh boy.
That's a nice euphemism.
Now, one problem is, this guy does not have no hair like no lamb's wool.
Nope, it's not kinky.
Like lamb's wool.
Revelation chapter 1, verse 14 and 15.
It says hair like white. We got to mention white. One sister said like lamb's wool. She said so it's symbolic. No, let me say this to this sister, whoever said that, that it says white like lamb's wool. First of all, when it says white like lamb's wool, it's Jesus died at the age of 33, some say 36, so his hair was not white. He was not an old man. This one that we're talking about who lived 2,000 years ago. So when it says white, it only means that his knowledge was pure.
Also, I'm a critic of the textual history of the Bible, and what you see as in many of these 22 many versions of the New Testament or the Hellenistic or Greek interpretation of that, that's an interpolation that took place centuries after the original manuscripts of that was interpreted. So when you look at it that way, it's not white. It's pure wool. That's a proper interpretation. Pure wool means to have some nice, that nice kinky, knotty dread hair.
I didn't see no African people in here. What, ain't the land where Jesus
was that in England or France or wait a minute, it was. If you look in the Bible, collectively speaking, we realize that it was in a nice area, extension off Africa, or also a lower part of Asia, which is misappropriately called the Middle East. That's another form of word association and word disassociation. 100 years ago, it was never called the Middle East. It was called Arabia, extension off Asia, and to some maps, it was extension off Africa. But of course, with the Western society of these religious groups and all these so-called theological seminaries, which distorts information, they put it to the Middle East because they want to be a part of Africa. Have you read your dictionary lately? Negro means to be lazy and dumb. So when you look at that premise, anything associated of anything of black was taken away. In fact, the first imagery as you have of this so-called, not making mockery here, this is complete truth, the first instance of you see as your blonde-haired, your blue-eyed individual didn't take place until the 16th century when Michelangelo was commissioned by the Vatican to paint not just the Sistine Chapel, but also other iconographic images of their particular deity. So when you look into the storyline, I'm not saying that Jesus was black. All I'm saying is he had melanin in his skin. Black is an adjective that got turned into a noun, and that is falling short of the linguistic integrity that's applied to that righteous individual. So when I say names like Issa, Yeshua, Yahushua Ben Pandero, Isis Christos, is not making mockery of it. It's to understand the original. We're trying to show you, as Dr. Clark talks about, the original. What we have right here is the carbon copy of Jesus. That's right. He was not blonde-haired. He did not have blue-eyed. I'm not saying he was completely black, but to many estimations by the old Ethiopian texts, by the old pictorials, by the Arabs around the 6th or 7th century, portrayed him as an individual with melanin skin. He had brown skin, point blank.
I'm gonna say he was black.
There you say it.
Look, I'm gonna say it because the Bible said, and like you said though, I'm gonna say, like John Henry Clark said, was he Greek? Was he Roman?
No.
Then he was not a man. He was not a white man.
No.
He said, I won't say that he was a black man, but if he wasn't Greek and he wasn't Roman, he was not white. So one of the things too is that the Bible says that he had feet like burnished brass.
Revelations
burnt.
Revelations chapter 1, verse 14 and 15.
Let me say this. As though burnt in an oven.
That's dark.
Can you get a piece of toast and burn it in an oven? What color is it?
It's coming out black.
It's coming out black, man.
Black, bro.
He was a burnt man.
I know. I didn't have no toaster, so we cooked bread in the oven. I know.
Yeah, look. It says that him and his mother fled into Egypt because they were trying to kill him. Egypt means the land of the black and the burnt-skinned people.
Yes, sir.
Now, the word Christ. Once again, the Council of Nicaea, taken from the pagans, Christ, some say, comes from the word Krishna. Krishna means perfect black. God of the perfect black.
But when you look at that, what is the culture of what you talk about, the language of Krishna, that's an Asiatic word. When you look into the real word is Christ, which is the Ethiopian or Ethiopi word, which is quite ancient and is quite old. So when you look at not just Christ or Christ, which is the anointed one, the Greeks of interpreting that, but we look at it's Christ, K-R-S-T, which means the black enlightened one.
This is amazing. Now, first of all, the name Jesus. Jesus, J-E-S-U-S. You have Jupiter and you have Zeus. One is Olympian god, one is one is a Greek god, and one is a Roman god.
Yes.
What they did was they combined the words. First of all, brothers and sisters, this word J is only 500-something years old. There's no J in the Hebrew language.
Right.
The Jehovah's Witnesses can tell you that that is Yahweh, not Jehovah, but the J was introduced by the Europeans. His name was Isa in Arabic, or Yeshua in Hebrew.
Yes.
That,
Isu, if you're speaking Egyptian,
now,
which he fled to many times.
another question is,